I want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you to Mansfield Independent Schools for having me here today for your Fall Dyslexia Parent Night. I am just so excited and honored to be here with you tonight for this special conversation and really this special message just for you. So, you may not know me. I'm Nicole Holcomb. I am the host of the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast. And like you, I also have a child with dyslexia. She is now in 5th grade, but our journey started way back, even before school, with struggles with speech, struggles with just articulation. You know, as we got into school, we started seeing struggles with sight words and, learning to read and pull words apart and just all of the things. So to say our journey has been smooth, it is not. Have we had some detours or have we had some, U-turns in our journey? Absolutely. One of the things that really, I think, caught us off guard as parents is the fact that, as a child, having a child with dyslexia, they have so many strengths and they have so many, for us, even early on, our daughter had a really large vocabulary for her age and she loved puzzles and she loved solving problems. And so we saw all these amazing strengths in her and we just couldn't figure out why the other pieces weren't falling into place. So dyslexia was not on our radar, but it quickly became part of what we knew might be the bigger, I guess you could say, student profile for her. And so as we started looking more and more into it, you can hear my whole journey if you go to the podcast at Dyslexia Mom Life. So I'll keep it kind of short today, which is we do eventually have her identified in 1st grade. We go through the journey of what do we do next. We find out that there's some other pieces as far as she was physically getting ill at school just because it was just too much. It was too much around her that she just couldn't take it all in. And so we eventually move her to a private school just for dyslexia. And again, I'd love you to come to the podcast and learn more about our journey and the amazing pieces we've learned along the way. Today, though, I'm here at the Fall Dyslexia Parent Night to give you a few tips on ways you can thrive at home with your children. Because I don't know about you, but, when we're at home at night and our kids have been at school all day, when they come home, they're just, literally exhausted, right? And there's still so much that we need to do to be able to help them thrive. So I'm going to give you 4 tips today that I think will be very helpful for you. The first tip is, when you're home at night and you're working on assignments or you're studying for a test, one is to get your kids up and moving. I don't know about you, but I'm very type A, and when I think about my education, I think about sitting down at the kitchen table and just getting my work done, right? So if you think about the way we were raised or the way we approach education, it is very different than what we might need to do with our own children. So the first tip I can give you is to move. It is absolutely okay and a necessity for our kids with dyslexia to get up and move around. Not only does it give them an opportunity to literally, stretch, but it also gives them an amazing opportunity to get their brain moving. There is a lot of research about what they call, crossing the midline. And so even early on with learning sight words or red words, we'd have her punch across like this to say her words or to, spell those out. And so there's many things you can do with movement, even if that's just jump roping in the house, going out to shoot a couple of hoops in the basketball goal out front. But when we get our kids moving, they come back kind of rejuvenated, and just ready to take on what the next task is. So I would say movement's very important. We are blessed that at our daughter's school, they have a lot of movement throughout the day, and it really does help her excel as a learner. The second one really goes along with the first one, which is taking breaks. I don't know about you, but after you've worked all day or you've had a full day, working on homework can also be taxing just on the family unit. And so sometimes we've learned that when we get frustrated or our daughter gets frustrated or maybe we hit something that's difficult, just taking a break. And we've got to the place now where our daughter may even say, "Can I just have like a 3-minute break?" And at first I was like, let's just push on through, let's get this done. We learned the hard way that that's not always the best way, right? So, if you're up against the time constraints for soccer or whatever, we get that. But sometimes if you can allow for those breaks, sometimes you just need to take that 5 minutes, say, hey, we're going to set a timer, 5 minutes, we're going to come back, and then incorporate that movement too. Get them outside, let them kick a soccer ball. I have to admit, our daughter rode her scooter inside our house, right, just to get a break. So movement and breaks are huge. The third tip I would say is exposure to vocabulary. Vocabulary is so important for our children to be successful readers and successful as they go forward in their future. And so that piece is so important. So let me give you a little tip. I learned this tip from Overcoming Dyslexia. It's a book by Dr. Sally Shaywitz. It's a book that's very highly recommended, has a lot of amazing tips in it, a lot of strategies in it, but it's a little hefty read. So give yourself a minute to, when you get that book, to look through it. But she's got something that I love. She has this visual in the book, and the visual is about how much vocabulary our children are exposed to. So I'm going to break it down for you real quickly. She says that if we read with our children at night, she recommends 20 minutes a night that we read with our child. Now that can be your child reading to you, that can be you reading to your child, that can be you like partnering and taking turns. You read a chapter, your child reads a chapter. Maybe it's you read a sentence and your child reads a sentence. Maybe it's one of those nights where you have to do all the reading. The main point is that exposure to vocabulary. So Dr. Shaywitz has done some research, and what she found is this. When our children read, let's just say we start off small. Our children read less than 1 minute a day. Less than 1 minute a day. In a span of a year, your child would be exposed to about 8,000 words. If you increase that, let's say, well, we can do about 5 minutes. So she found in her research, for children who read 4.6 minutes a day, that on an average in a year, your child would be exposed to 262,000 words a year. So think of all that new vocabulary that would be introduced into their, to their everyday knowledge and their reading and being exposed to vocabulary. So you think, wow, that's pretty good, 8,000 to 262,000. Surely we can do the 5 minutes a day. But what is amazing is Dr. Shaywitz found that when we read 20 minutes a day with our children, it goes all the way up to 1.8 million words a year your child is exposed to. 1.8 million. So you can see from the less than one minute at 8,000 to 1.8 million is amazing. So I'm going to be honest, do we do it every night? Absolutely not. Do we strive to do that every night? Absolutely, because we know for her to be a successful reader and have what they call fluency, whereas she's able to identify words, she has to be exposed to those words. And so that is a big piece of that, is having that opportunity. The fourth tip I would give to you as far as things you could do at home to help your child thrive, if I had to rank these 1 to 4, this would be number 1. This, I think, is the most important thing that we can do with our children. And it may seem common sense, but I have seen this in many places. Well, not really, actually. Let me go back. I've seen this in a few places where I thought they did it really well. And, feel free to message me if you want to know where those are, and I'll share those with you. But the fourth one is so important. It is relationships. And the relationship I'm talking about is the relationship that you have with your child. So what I mean by that is that we have to think about, what is their day like? We have to think about, we were just talking about homework. I think about building that relationship with my daughter because I hope at some point she will go out and have her own life. And I want to be able to continue to have that strong relationship. And what I found was interesting, I believe it was Dr. Daniel Franklin in his book, he talked about relationships. And he said, I remember, your child's not going to remember in 2nd grade that you sat down and necessarily helped them with a certain math homework. But what she is going to remember is that you were there every night and that you worked through that struggle with her or with him. It's being there beside them and also helping them embrace failures. There's such a stigma around being a failure or failing at things. But we know that to be successful, we have to have failure. We have to get things wrong in order to know what we need to do to get things right. So part of that is working through failure, and part of that is how do we perceive that as a parent. And so how do we embrace that with our children to really know that it's part of the process. And for those of you, which should be everyone in the audience, is that you're raising children with dyslexia. They are going to have days where they are going to have failures, and how we approach those failures with them and how we have that mindset is going to be huge for them. That doesn't mean saying you'll get it right next time. It doesn't mean, overcompensating. What it does mean is, yes, this is hard. This is going to be a challenge. Let's see how we can do this together. Let's try this again. So it's all about the way we really frame things up with our children. There's a great book by Carol Dweck. It's called Mindset. And it talks about a lot of different things about mindset, but there's a whole chapter about how we communicate with our children and the messages that we tell our children. And I think it's very impactful, even as educators, talking to students in our classroom about failure. And instead of, because our kids, I don't know about yours, but mine will call me out. If I just say, oh, well, you'll win the next soccer game, she might say, well, Mom, what if it's a harder team? What if they're better? What if I'm sick? All of these things. And so we have to say things like, well, you know what, we'll practice an extra night. We'll do some things together as a family to help you, get that skill the way it needs to be. Maybe it's that we have to practice a little more on that multiplication facts. But it is okay to acknowledge things are hard, but we don't want to say you can't do this, or, I'm just bad at math. I had to catch myself saying that. I'm just bad at math. I have to say, you know what, math is difficult, but we can do this together. And so, it's just changing the way that we say things and how we say things, and just being aware of things, how we say things. So when I think about relationships, we just talked about building that strong relationship with your child. And again, that is also a whole completely different journey that you're on. But another piece that's important is really relationships outside of your home, what I like to call building your tribe. And so one of the pieces I really want to share with you tonight is that the people at your school today, the people that are there at your Fall Dyslexia Parent Night, the people that are there supporting your child every day are so important and are so important to our journey. And so when we think about partnerships with them, we have to think about, I know it was funny, I interviewed someone not too long ago, and she said, evidently it does take a tribe. And you know what, she's right. It does take a tribe. It does take a community around our kids. It does take, this village, rather, I think that's what she said, is it really does take a village. That's what she said, a village around our kids. And when you think about all the supports that our children have, when you think about the psychologist that tested your child, when you think about the speech therapist that works with your child, when you think about your neighbor who picks your child up at the bus stop, all of these people are so important to our children. But when we think about the educators in our children's lives, those are the people that your children are with the most. Those people are so important as role models, and they're so important to your child being successful. So one of the things I do as a former educator, my husband's an educator, is that I always make it my job. I don't wait for someone to come to me. I go to them, and I try to build that relationship with the educators in my daughter's life. I want them to know that I value them. I value what they're doing. I appreciate what they're doing. And this one bit of advice I can give you as you go forward with this partnership and building that partnership, and you're walking into those 504 meetings or those IEP meetings, or you're having that difficult conversation about that homework assignment that didn't go so well at home, is that when you have the mindset that we're going to do what's in the best interest for your child, and when you go into those meetings and you say, you know what, if we can I want to first just talk about, let's talk about my child. And when we put our child's interest ahead of our own interest and our own emotions, we can do amazing things. The last thing I want to say about that piece about building strong relationships at school is you really are your child's first teacher. You are your child's best advocate. You are so important to your child and for your child. And they get their cues from us. So when we think about that perception, if we lose trust with a school, if we don't have trust in a teacher, if we just don't agree with something, and that's okay. There's going to be years, we've all been there, when we've had difficult years, and we maybe just have a difference of opinion on things. But we have to remember that our children are watching us. And so what type of perception do we want our children to have? Because if the perception is, this is not going to be a successful year, guess what? It's not going to be a successful year. So there's a lot of work we as parents have to do up front to build that relationship with the schools, but also, you are modeling how you want your child to respond to teachers. Better yet, you're also modeling how you want your child to be as an adult. How do you want them to speak to other adults? How do you want them to interact in a work setting? All of these are skills that your children are learning so that they can thrive and be successful as adults. So yes, it is fine. We're going to have hard conversations. We should have hard conversations. We should be challenging each other in respectful ways, but we also should be putting things in place for our children to be successful. So I would love for you to continue with me on my journey. I would love to partner with you on your journey. Feel free to come over and join our journey on Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast. I also have a free Facebook group at Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast Community. No charge to you. It's free. You do have to answer some questions, so that way I can get you in an environment with people with like minds. You can ask questions. I've got advocates in that group. I have parents in that group. Obviously, I have parents in that group. It's an amazing group. They'll answer your questions many times when I've not even got to your question yet. So it's been a great community. I think you'll enjoy the community. I'd love if you'd like to learn more about our journey and learn more about the things that we're doing to partner with schools and also help our children thrive with dyslexia. I invite you to come over to our website, to our podcast, Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast, and follow our journey. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It says a lot that this is important to you and that you're here tonight at the Fall Dyslexia Parent Night. Thank you for letting me be part of your night, and I hope you have a wonderful next session.